Your daughter cheated.
They accused his daughter of cheating. The single dad walked into school and shocked everyone. The phone call came just after lunch, and within 30 seconds, Michael Carter felt as though the ground beneath him had disappeared. The school principal's voice was calm, but the words were devastating. His 12-year-old daughter, Grace, had been caught cheating during her final mathematics exam. The school board had already gathered evidence, and they wanted him to come immediately. Michael looked around the small auto repair shop where he worked double shifts every week just to keep food on the table. Grease covered his hands, exhaustion filled his eyes, and yet none of that compared to the pain he felt hearing someone accuse the only person he trusted most in the world. As he removed his work gloves, one thought kept repeating in his mind. His daughter had never lied to him. Something wasn't right. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a chance, that people should never be judged too quickly, and that every child deserves someone who stands by them no matter what, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that restore faith in humanity. Michael had been raising Grace alone since his wife, Rebecca, passed away from cancer 6 years earlier in Ohio, United States. Every morning started before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, packed lunches, drove Grace to school, worked 10-hour shifts repairing engines, picked her up after school, cooked dinner, helped with homework, and stayed awake until she finally fell asleep. Life wasn't easy, but he had promised Rebecca during her final days that Grace would never feel unloved. That promise became the purpose of his life. Grace wasn't the loudest student or the most popular. She was quiet, thoughtful, and incredibly hardworking. She loved numbers almost as much as she loved reading mystery novels. While other children spent weekends playing video games, Grace often solved math puzzles she found in old library books. Her teachers had praised her intelligence for years. That was why Michael couldn't understand how anyone could believe she had cheated. The drive to Jefferson Middle School felt longer than ever. Every traffic light seemed determined to test his patience. His heart pounded harder with every mile. He wasn't angry at Grace. He was afraid. Afraid she had been falsely accused. Afraid she was sitting somewhere alone, believing no one trusted her. More than anything, he feared she would lose faith in herself. When Michael entered the school office wearing his faded blue work shirt stained with oil, several parents waiting nearby quietly glanced at him before looking away. The conference room door stood open. Inside sat Principal Linda Harper, 2 teachers, the guidance counselor, and a district administrator. Grace sat silently in the corner, clutching her backpack tightly against her chest. Her eyes were red from crying, but when she saw her father, something changed. She didn't smile, yet the fear on her face softened because she knew he had come. A stack of papers rested on the conference table. At the top was Grace's mathematics exam with an almost perfect score. Beside it was another student's test with nearly identical answers. The teachers explained that both papers contained the same unusual solution methods, including one incorrect intermediate calculation that somehow still produced the correct final answer. According to school policy, matching uncommon work strongly suggested cheating. Michael listened carefully without interrupting. Every adult in the room believed the evidence spoke for itself. Some avoided eye contact with him, assuming he would simply accept the school's decision. But instead of reacting emotionally, Michael quietly asked one simple question. Had anyone actually asked Grace to explain how she solved the problems? The room fell strangely silent. Grace finally looked up and gently explained that she had learned the shortcut months earlier from an old mathematics competition workbook she borrowed from the public library. The strange intermediate step wasn't copied from another student. It came directly from the book. She even remembered the page because she had solved the exercise several times at home. One teacher shook her head politely. Without the workbook, there was no proof. Michael looked at Grace, and something inside him settled. He believed every word she said. Instead of arguing, he calmly asked if the meeting could be delayed until the next morning. The administrators exchanged uncertain glances before reluctantly agreeing. That evening, father and daughter searched every shelf in their tiny apartment. They opened boxes stored under beds, checked closets, and looked through old backpacks. The workbook wasn't there. Grace's shoulders slowly sank. She remembered returning it to the library weeks earlier. Most people would have given up. Michael didn't. Early the next morning, before reporting to work, he drove directly to the public library. The librarian recognized Grace immediately. She remembered the quiet girl who checked out advanced math books far beyond her grade level. After searching the computer system, she located the exact competition workbook Grace had borrowed. Michael carefully turned the pages until Grace suddenly pointed toward a familiar problem. There it was. The exact same unusual solution method. The same intermediate mistake. The same explanation. Michael quietly asked permission to photocopy the pages. The librarian gladly agreed. When he returned to school that afternoon, the conference room was once again filled with administrators expecting a brief conclusion. Instead, Michael placed the copied pages beside Grace's exam without saying a word. Everyone leaned forward. Every unusual step matched perfectly. The room became completely silent. But Michael wasn't finished. During the previous evening, something else had bothered him. Grace mentioned another student named Ethan had once borrowed the same workbook after seeing her studying it during lunch. Michael had asked the librarian to check the borrowing records. Sure enough, Ethan had checked out the identical workbook 2 weeks after Grace returned it. No school rule had been broken. 2 students had simply learned the same uncommon method from the same published source. The accusation suddenly began falling apart. Principal Harper slowly removed her glasses. The district administrator reread every document twice before finally admitting they had reached a conclusion far too quickly. Grace hadn't cheated. She had simply studied harder than anyone realized. An apology followed, but Michael wasn't interested in embarrassing anyone. He wasn't there for revenge. He only wanted one thing restored: his daughter's name. The school immediately removed every disciplinary record from Grace's file. Teachers personally apologized, and the principal announced that the investigation had been closed with no wrongdoing found. For most families, that might have been the end. But Michael noticed something far more painful than paperwork. Grace had stopped believing in herself. Although everyone now knew she was innocent, whispers continued in the hallways. Some students still stared. Others quietly wondered whether the school had simply changed its mind to avoid trouble. Grace no longer raised her hand in class. She no longer smiled after solving difficult problems. The confidence she had spent years building disappeared in only 2 days. Michael realized clearing her record wasn't enough. He needed to help her recover her courage. A few weeks later, the district announced its annual mathematics challenge open to every middle school student in the county. Grace refused to enter. She insisted she wasn't smart anymore. Michael never forced her. Instead, every evening after dinner, he placed one puzzle on the kitchen table. Sometimes Grace solved it. Sometimes she ignored it. Sometimes they laughed over impossible equations neither of them understood. Little by little, mathematics stopped reminding her of accusations and started reminding her of evenings spent with her father. Weeks passed. One night Grace quietly filled out the competition registration form herself. Michael never celebrated loudly. He simply smiled because he knew the biggest victory had already happened. She believed in herself again. Competition day arrived inside a large university auditorium packed with hundreds of students from across Ohio. Parents waited nervously outside while children tackled difficult problems unlike anything found in normal classrooms. Hours later, results appeared on a giant screen. 3rd place. 2nd place. Then 1st. Grace Carter. The auditorium erupted into applause. Students, teachers, and parents stood together clapping as the shy girl who had once been accused of cheating slowly walked toward the stage with tears filling her eyes. Among the audience stood Principal Harper. She applauded louder than anyone. After the ceremony, she approached Michael privately. She admitted that his calm determination had changed the way the entire school handled investigations. From that day forward, no student would ever again be judged without first being given every opportunity to explain, provide evidence, and be heard fairly. One father's quiet courage had changed school policy. Months later, Grace returned to Jefferson Middle School with her championship medal hanging proudly around her neck during the annual academic assembly. Instead of celebrating only her achievement, the principal invited her to share something with the younger students. Grace didn't speak about winning. She spoke about believing the truth even when nobody else does. She spoke about studying because knowledge matters more than recognition. Most importantly, she spoke about having one person who refuses to stop believing in you. When she finished, the auditorium stood in complete silence before hundreds of students rose to their feet. Michael sat quietly in the back row. No spotlight reached him. No award carried his name. Yet everyone knew the real hero wasn't the girl wearing the medal. It was the father who arrived straight from work with grease on his hands and faith in his heart. He had taught an unforgettable lesson. Evidence matters. Patience matters. And love never gives up. Before we reach the ending, tell us in the comments, if you were Michael, would you have done the same for your child? We'd love to read your thoughts. Years later, Grace graduated as valedictorian of her high school class. During her graduation speech, she looked toward the audience until her eyes found the man who had sacrificed everything for her. She thanked every teacher who had encouraged her, every friend who had stood beside her, and finally the father who had believed her before anyone else did. Michael quietly wiped away a tear. Not because his daughter had become successful, but because she had never stopped believing that truth, kindness, and unconditional love would always be stronger than false accusations. If this story touched your heart, please don't leave without liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs hope today, subscribing for more emotional stories, and leaving a heartfelt comment. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need a reminder that one person's faith can change another person's entire life.